traffic, I guess. This lady comes out, she's like, you can't park your bus here, you know. We had to keep taking our buses and parking them other places, which made it kind of challenging for the pilgrims, but they made do. And they have this painting inside of the martyrs in Tokyo. I didn't know much about the martyrs in Tokyo before this, but this is not the site where it happened. They have a site marked, but it's kind of meager or weak. It's just like a stone and a tree, a little stick.
They commemorate them, the Tokyo martyrs, in this church. They have like a crypt and a little museum of some different artifacts.
Yeah.
So if you look here, it kind of tells a story.
Yeah.
So there's a Franciscan here coming up, and is that a Jesuit?
Yeah.
So then they're bringing them, and they're going to get judged by this guy. So these people are all guilty, and they're going to get burned at the stake. And
this man, he had his
what was
hands cut off, so he could only ride with his feet. He couldn't hold the horse, but he willingly gave his life.
We all know, how the Japanese were before the war, and you're hearing all these awful stories. You'd think you'd go there and they'd be like this, really, scary people, but they're so nice. It's so ironic that they're such wonderful people that they did this kind of stuff. I don't know.
So the priest said he was going on a walk with some people to that site the next day, which was kind of cool. I love this depiction of light streaming through above the cross. But you can kind of see these churches are more industrial now as we're moving up. I took this picture for Brother Dominic Michael, a little infant of Prague right there. It's in the church. And then we went on to Shiomi Church. I like this depiction. It has like the shadows on the wall. It looks like the three crosses, kind of at Jesus' crucifixion there.
Are you familiar with her, Satoko Kitahara? So she is a venerable, and she is actually a convert. And one day she's walking in a church in Yokohama, and she came across a statue of Our Lady, and that was kind of her conversion right there. And then she became Catholic. Long story, but she came from a very prominent family, and after the war, a lot of the children were orphaned, and there's some shanty parts of town, and she started going and helping, and she got to know Brother Zeno, who they got to be good friends and work closely together, and someone said to her, well, what good are you? You're here during the day, but you go home to your nice house. And so that was like, yeah, right. So she gave it all up, and she moved in with the slums, with the poor people, and taught the children. She ended up getting tuberculosis and dying. But yeah, she's a great.
What's her name again?
Satoko Kitahara. And there's a book written about her, and she's got a great story.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
You got
the story of a rag picker by Father
Yeah.
Hoagland.
So this church, the Shiomi Church, has a statue of her outside. It's a commemoration of her, and they've got a storyboard that kind of tells her story inside.
She's often compared to as a St. Francis of Tokyo. Yeah.
So I'd asked if we could be, when we were trying to arrange the trip, I wanted to be by that last church, and then all of a sudden, sorry, we couldn't get the church you wanted. You have to be here. And so I Googled right away. I'm so mad. Googled right away and saw there was this Shiomi Church, and wouldn't you know, it's Satoko's church. And so I was trying to explain, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. I'm like, what's the big deal about that? I'm like, well, because Tokyo is 860, square miles. So just the odds of us being 6-minute walk to this church, that was kind of fun. So
I don't have a picture of it, but on the Stations of the Cross, on the 5th station, they put her image in the back, Simon and Cyrene helping Jesus carry his cross. There was somebody who used her depiction to put her in that station, which was really neat. And then off to Akit. Didn't come up well on the on the first station. Akita. Oh, sorry. Okay. So we went up to Seitai Hoshkai, which is the convent where Sister Agnes, the visionary of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Our Lady of Akita, was before. We were not allowed to take pictures inside. Whoops, I took tons.
They built it. This is a newer church. Wasn't the original church when Sister was having the fusion, whatever you call it, locutions. And they shaped it, made it like kind of like a Shinto shrine. It was kind of nice. So it was really nice. We were in these beautiful old churches. We were in these modern churches, and now we're at this beautiful Japanese church, which was exciting.
This was probably one of the best ways to end the trip too. I mean, not just geographically speaking, but just a nice bookend, you know, from the Nagasaki being at the beginning and Akita being at the end. And Leslie and I, our first time there, went up the hill where they've got little shrines along the side, but with the pilgrims we took a bus, so I got to see the other perspective coming from the other way, and quite a few cherry blossoms on the way. Most of them had died out, but there were still a few around. I'll show you. And this is the statue that famously wept and bled, wept 101 times over the course of 8 years, from 1973 to 1981. And the date that she appeared as Sister Agnes Sasagawa was the Miracle of the Sun, Lady of Fatima, October 13th.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way that could be considered the feast day of Our Lady of Akita, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, when I was down in Nagasaki, I was just, I don't know, this time when I was there, like, wow, it's just amazing how, you know, our God is, you know, a white woman with a white, you know, Jesus was a white guy, and you know, I was just like, wow, it's so beautiful that the Japanese people are okay with having a God that's a white guy and a white mom or whatever, and just was really pondering it that the whole trip. And then we got here, and oh wow! So you look at her, she looks Japanese. I never noticed that until this time. So I was like, oh, she's their lady, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice how Our Lady does that everywhere she goes.
Yeah. She was sculpted by a non-Christian Buddhist artist, and after the miracle happened, he saw the statue again after 10 years, and he wouldn't acknowledge that it was a miracle, but he said it was a mystery because her expression had changed. I'm not exactly sure how, and Father Elias said even if you asked them, they probably wouldn't tell you. So that is a mystery, but yeah, here's there's video of her crying. The tears have been tested. They've had real salinity found in human tears, and the blood tested to be O and AB, just like our Lord's blood. And they have a record of those drops. There's a little sheet that has those cotton balls on it that shows the dates.
And the bishop actually was there. He was their spiritual director, so he witnessed the tears a bunch of times.
Bishop Ito, he got and many other non-believers also, just like with Fatima. There were media reports. People were coming from all over, and she cried right in front of them. You know, just exhorting people to pray the Rosary and to turn back to God. And here's the original tabernacle that Sister Agnes saw. It glowed gold, and she heard the voice of our Lord speaking to her, which
Here. It's a little
box. Unfortunately, it's back in the sacristy.
I don't have it out.
It's hard to gain access to it unless you're clergy, but I guess the story goes that when she had heard the voice, she was skeptical of it. She didn't want to return in fear that the voice might speak to her again, and she just gradually returned, and this is what kind of perpetuated the...
Well, she wasn't feeling good, and the sisters had to go somewhere.
She was very sick.
And they told her, you stay back and pray, and so she was just praying, and then she had her eyes closed, and she opened them up, and this tabernacle, I guess, was glowing, and I don't really know the whole story either, sorry.
She was declared deaf, and
That's right, she was healed.
She was healed by Our Lady of Akita, And then there was another person that was healed of their affliction by Our Lady of Akita as well. Here's us celebrating Mass in the.
So we were told to put masks on.
Participating in Mass.
I didn't get the message.
What's that?
I feel kind of bad. You're all mad that we didn't have masks on. I didn't hear until later.
Oh. But there, I like this chapel a lot. It has a very
floors.
oriental design, you know. I think to myself, I wish there were places like this in the U.S., like not Zen, but kind of Zen style Catholic monasteries. I would love to just go there on a retreat. And then there was a picture of the Divine Mercy, but it was written in German, so I thought that was kind of cool. Jesus, I trust in you in all languages, my heart. And then we prayed in front of this statue. Our Lady of Akita, since the artist didn't know really what Mary looked like because he was a Buddhist, he looked up depictions of her and he found Our Lady of All Nations and modeled her after that. So she has that connection. And we prayed in front of this statue. So here's kind of a look at what the masses are like, serving in the chapel, Maximilian Kolbe.
Yeah, it was nice to have Brother Sir every day.
Yeah, we had a couple pilgrims join us early on, the Matsuda. It's nice to have them.
We also had a deacon.
Yep.
So the three of them were up there every day, which was nice. It was great.
It initiated a lot of bad jokes. Like a priest, a brother, and a deacon walking the mass together. Celebrate in Japan. Yeah, it's very solemn. And then everyone knelt down to receive the Eucharist. We had communion rails. I was the lector and the server. So I would stand at this table and just hand the deacon, and then he would hand. So we all had a role to play. And then here's at the Mass, one of the last Masses we had at the Seitai Hoshikai. And then here's some of the sites we visited. Kumamoto. There's this giant bear. That's their mascot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they got a lot of rice paddies.
Beautiful countryside. Yeah. We visited Kumamoto Castle, and as Leslie mentioned, there was an earthquake there 5 years ago, so a lot of it is destroyed, and they're rebuilding it right now. It's just grand to be able to visit these places. See, thousands of
architecture's just amazing.
Yeah, just thousands of years of history. I always say, even though these weren't built to glorify God, they circuitously, glorify God by their design. And there's a lot of comparisons of the different castles, keeps. You can kind of see some models inside of what it would have looked
So
like.
like shoguns live in?
Mm-hmm. Yep, shoguns, daimyos, generals.
Cool picture.
Here's what it looked like in the past. Here's kind of an overview of Kumamoto.
So you can go up on the top floor. These castles always have like a lookout,
Mm-hmm.
and so the castles were built so that they could keep an eye on things.
Yeah. And then they have this ornamental fish on top. On to Nagasaki, Maximilian Kolbe's house. For those of you who saw my presentation a few years ago, you might remember that this was the chimney that's been retained in his original house. I thought this was his first friary, but I was corrected. This is actually his first house where he transitioned into his first friary.
But they were there for a year, I believe, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's still a lot of history there.
Oh yeah, so he wasn't allowed to have mass there. He had to always go to that Ora church, which is
Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a climb, maybe, would you say, 5 or 10 minutes for an able-bodied person?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the statue of him holding a miraculous medal. I thought, wow, that's providential. We're handing out miraculous medals. I'll take one from you, Maximilian Kolbe. And then we got to see some of the sites of the Japanese martyrs and hidden Christians. Here's the Unzen hells. So they would boil people alive in these volcanic hot springs. There was a story that really touched me that Father Elias read. He would read these accounts on the bus trips there to set us into the mode. And I don't remember if he was dropped in these hot springs or in the ocean, but it was the hot springs. This one martyr, I can't remember his name. Do you remember?
St. Paul Gibori.
Thank you, St. Paul Gibori. They just kept putting him up and down, up and down, up and down, asking him to renounce. And the only thing he said was, "Praise be Jesus Christ and the Blessed Sacrament." That's what he said every time that they pulled him up and down. And that was, I think even Father Elias teared up a little bit, reading that story. So it was powerful. Then we went to the 26 Martyrs Museum. There's a picture of the fumier. The fumier is something they would step on to renounce their faith in Jesus. So the Japanese would say, "Step on it, step on it." There would be pictures of Jesus or Mary. And if they didn't step, then they would know they were a Christian. This is depicted in the movie Silence, and in fact, this is a replica from the set. So it
That
was
was a lot of stuff that was from the movie Silence. And there was a place we wanted to go, but we didn't have enough time. There's a hill over by Uwakami Cathedral. It has some crosses on it where the people that would step on the fumier would go up there, run up there, and repent. You can imagine how bad you would feel, So, but I was just reading like a few days ago that it was because of the people these great martyrs, God bless them, but the people that stepped on the fumier, they were the hidden Christians, and they were the ones that kept the faith. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword thing,
Oh, yeah.
So it was because of them that there's still,
I think that's depicted
that's
really
hard.
well in
in
the movie with
Yeah.
Kichichiro. He's kind of a Judas character, and he keeps going back and forth. Yeah. Here's a picture of me outside of the 26 Martyrs Memorial. The youngest one is Louis Ibaraki. He was only 12 years old, and he gave his life with the other 25. And then they had some artifacts from the missionaries, like their hats and things they brought along. A huge umbrella, look at that. Can you imagine carrying that around? Some beautiful images in the museum. See, they wouldn't nail them to the cross, but they would tie their hands and their feet. But other than that, they died in the same manner as our Lord.
And then set it on fire,
These
Sometimes they got stakes.
Yeah, the spears.
or
Yeah.
spears.
Just like Longitudinus in the Gospels. But before that, they marched from Osaka to Nagasaki in the middle of winter, and they had their ears cut off so that if they escaped, they would know that they were one of the Christians. And none of them ever complained or grumbled. They all smiled joyfully and were so grateful
They didn't have
to their
shoes
lives.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing, these stories. It's
Very inspiring.
very inspiring. You read them and you're like, oh man.
Yeah. To think
Got a lot of room to grow.
Christianity was only just introduced there and
Right.
spread for about 30 years,
Recently.
and then they were willing to go to these lengths
Right.
for Christ. I mean, in the movie Silence, they try to sow some seeds of doubt and say, well, they weren't worshiping the Son of God, they were worshiping the sun in the sky. But you hear these stories and see how much devotion they had for the Eucharist, and you think, no, none of these guys would ever die for such a lie,
Right, and so much grace. Like the children, read the accounts of the children always would say they were smiling or giggling, and they had fingers cut off, and the children are giggling, and so it's supernatural.
And this Francis Xavier that introduced the faith this 30 years
Yes,
before.
and
Is that
he
right?
was right. He apparently performed a lot of miracles too. He was.
Yeah.
You don't read too much about him, but he did do that.
And that's another act of providence, because he was in India at the time, and somebody from Japan came over and said, I think that people of Japan would really just latch onto the gospel if you brought it over. So he said, okay. And then he went with them, and sure enough, that's what happened. And they were given many graces too. Like, they didn't really speak Japanese that well, but
Right,
kind of
that's
like
how you do it.
Pentecost, you know, they could just speak to each other and understand each other, so that the gospel could be communicated.
And St. Maximilian, sorry, go ahead.
Those round portholes around the crucifix, you know what those are?
Are you
It's
talking
like
about these?
design
Yeah.
on the wall.
I think that's just the design on the wall. Yeah.
But St. Maximilian Kolbe, like, they didn't even know the language either, and within a month they were publishing a magazine. Like,
Yeah.
how does that happen?
Uh-huh.
You know, typesetting a magazine.
Yeah. And there's some more like rosaries and things that they found. Some
Like, there's
depictions of the.
Priests, they killed all the priests.
That was probably their most brutal form of torture. Was they would cut a slit in their neck and hang them upside down in a dark pit. And this is basically the breaking point for the priest in the movie Silence, because the Inquisitor says, you know, you can save them by renouncing your faith, and that's what he chooses to do because he can't bear the sight of it. But there's other inspiring examples, like St. Mary Magdalene. She was in there for 20 days, and she didn't renounce her faith. She died in that manner. So, just, you know,
It's amazing.
yeah. And then we're moving on to the Shimabara Rebellion. I put rebellion in quotations because really it was like a revolution or an uprising to retain the faith. And I didn't realize this, but it was Catholic led, entirely Christian. 30,000, 40,000 Christians at this site who were fighting for their religious freedom. So here's kind of a depiction of what the Shimabara Rebellion looked like.
So we went there, it's basically, they just have a statue of the young kid that kind of led the rebellion.
He was 17 years old, and he led it, yeah. He was called Francisco, so he had a very Franciscan heart. But according to Father Elias, they would have most likely won the battle, but there was an anti-Catholic Protestant who convinced the Japanese that the Catholics were trying to overtake them and influence their culture. So they conscripted with the Dutch, I think, the Protestants, and they opened fire on them with their cannons and the ships, and then that basically turned the tide of the battle. And then there were these three statues overlooking the site. We almost didn't see them at first. They were kind of over a ridge. We had to climb over. And there was a couple ninjas there. We thought that was funny that there was a city named Obama. We were kind of making some jokes like.
Brother was making jokes.
So we like this
We
a
were
lot
laughing.
better than the president. Here's a rock, which some of you may have seen the video on YouTube. The hidden Christians would gather here from the 1700s through the 1800s, and we were told by a guide. This is amazing. This God's providence is so amazing. He gave us this guide who. What was she doing there?
Our bus
she was just
pulled up to this
relaxing.
little place
Yeah.
that had a little hidden Christian museum, and all of a sudden these people came like, oh, you know, she spoke perfect English. She's a Japanese American, and went to college here. She's expert in all this, and
Yeah.
she's like, oh, can I guide you for the rest of the day? No,
Yeah.
I'll be with you.
This is
So-
in the countryside, so
Yeah,
this
and
is a
no-
rare encounter.
Yeah.
So she took us here too. This is a prayer rock where they would administer the sacraments and pray in the middle of the night under this huge rock. You can't really tell how big it is, but there's a big cavern underneath it that apparently they would go hide. And it's in the middle of the woods too, like up half a mountain.
I recorded the whole conversation, but there was a Japanese speaking guide, and she was translating for him, and he was saying that there were two kinds of Christians. There were the Senpuku Christians, who were like the ones that were there for the majority from the 1600s until the 1800s, and then in the 1800s, 1853 is when they opened up the gates to other foreign traders, and that's kind of when Father Petitjean arrived. Then they thought that since the ban on Christianity was lifted, they could worship freely, but the persecutions were still happening, so people were being captured. A lot like when slavery ended in the
Yeah.
United States, it took a while, so people thought they were safe, and then they were captured, and then a new form of hidden Christians developed called the Kakare Christian, and they mingled Christianity with Buddhism, and they're still around today. They're called the hidden Christians, Kakare Christian. They're not hiding, but they still retain that belief in Buddhism and Catholicism intermingling, so they would come over here and pray. And there's a site, which, I have it in this video, but there was like a little shrine where a priest is buried there. It looks like a Japanese shrine, but it's a Catholic shrine. And
Yeah.
Buddhists and, Kakare and, Kakare Christian and regular mass going Catholics also both appreciate that site.
Yeah, it was kind of like an incognito place for the,
Yeah.
looked like it was a Shinto shrine, but really their priest was there administering the sacraments. So it's neat hidden Christian stuff in the middle of the woods.
Here's another site that was way deep in the middle of the woods. We had to trek quite a while to find it. But this was a house run by kind of a lay Catholic, and what he taught catechism, I suppose. Other things. He had all kinds of
He baptized,
tools.
a lot of baptizing, but he
Yeah.
eventually was caught and martyred too.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting to see the inside of his little hut there. And then we moved on to Takashi Nagai's hermitage, and for those of you who are not familiar, he was a scientist, radiologist. He was at first an atheist, and he lived kind of not a debaucherous lifestyle, but he engaged in some of that activity with like prostitutes and drinking heavily. But his life changed when he met his future wife, Midori. She loved to pray the rosary, and brought him to midnight mass on Christmas Eve, and he was just overcome with all the traditions of the church, and he slowly converted. He was also attracted to Pascal's wager, if you're familiar with that. If you choose God, you can be rewarded. If you choose hell, you risk being damned. That sort of thing. So
Didn't he help Maximilian translate some of his stuff?
Yeah,
He was his doctor too at one
Yeah.
point.
yes, Maximilian Kolbe went to him for an analysis on his lungs, and he went to the fight in China twice, but because he was a doctor, he wanted to help the wounded soldiers on both sides, and that kind of astonished his fellow countrymen. When the atomic bomb was dropped, his wife was found holding the rosary in their kitchen, and he dedicated his life to helping those victims, exposing himself to 3 times the amount of radiation a normal human being should receive. He ended up coming down with leukemia, ending up in this little hut, which we'll show you. But he gave this speech in front of the Urakami Cathedral, preaching peace for the Japanese people, saying this basically controversial statement that we've become a Holocaust for God. They didn't really understand what that meant, but just to atone for the sins, not of the Japanese, not of the Americans, but of all of humanity. So he really fostered that spirit of peace in the Japanese people.
Yeah, and they didn't really like it at first, because it was like he gave that speech a year after the bomb dropped. He when the bomb dropped, he was at work, and he also was injured, but all of a sudden all these people that had gotten injured from the bomb were coming to the hospital where he was at. So it wasn't until 3 days later, so he worked tirelessly for 3 days helping people, and then they finally said, you need to go home and check on your wife, and that's when he finally got to go home and found his wife was dead. And the kids, thanks be to God, had gone up to grandma's house up in the mountains, so the kids were fine.
He wrote the famous book, Bells of Nagasaki, which a lot of Japanese people know. He had a lot of visitors during his time. In his last days, he became quite a mystic. He had the emperor visit him, Helen Keller, so he attracted a lot of attention. But this was my first time visiting this hermitage. I didn't make time on my last trip, so it was really a blessing to be there to see what it looked like on the inside. It's preserved. It's a very humble dwelling. And then there was a museum inside too. This is the rosary. This actually is not in the Takashi Nagai Museum, it's in the Atomic Bomb Museum, but this is the rosary that his wife was holding on to. Now, I want to forewarn you, some of the images here can be a little graphic. This is the Atomic Bomb Museum in Nagasaki. So this is a famous picture of a child holding his dead brother, and he brought it to the authorities, and the authorities said, they were just overcome with grief. And they said, give him here, give him to us. And he didn't want to let go of his brother, and you can see in his expression, he was doing his duty after the bomb was dropped, to help his brother get a proper burial. So it's a very powerful, moving image that even Pope Francis had some comments on. Here's some of the damage from that bomb, or Kami Cathedral. Some photos. Here's kind of a model of the bomb. The clothes that were found. A lot of the damage that had been done to people, the radiation. The effects of the radiation, how it works. The different levels that it takes. The people that were involved in developing the bomb. There's some artwork depicting the souls rising up and the plane dropping it. And then we move on to Hiroshima. Some similar images here. There's some black rain that fell down. People got so hot, that they got thirsty and they started drinking the black rain, which also had radiation in it. Here's one of the priests that Leslie mentioned that was in that Jesuit order. He gives his testimony, Hugo LaSalle. So he would have been in Father Schiffer's group. Some depictions of how the radiation affects people. The fallout. We had a bomb dropped in Bikini Atoll near Hawaii, and that's also had some detrimental effects on people. A side-by-side comparison of one of their famous sites, the Genbaku Dome, the atomic bomb dome. It was like kind of a financial institution before, and then you can visit it in the heart of the city there. We moved on to Kyoto. There's the Kyoto Tower. And then we visited this Nijo. Yeah. So this is one of the places where the emperor came or resided. Yeah, so we said a prayer for him for persecuting Christians.
Yeah, these castles that we went to visit were the guys that were persecuting the Christians.
Yeah. But it's still cool to see.
People wanted to
inside
see
and-
Japanese traditional things, but you don't want to take them to temples and stuff because that's pagan worship. So castles is a good alternative.
Yeah. And then to Tokyo. We got to see Brother Zeno's grave. So that was my first time there. You can see there. It says, they write his name as Brother Zenon. There's some pictures of him. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh, well, he did so much, after the bomb dropped, he did so much to help the people of Nagasaki, and then after he went on throughout the country, ending up in Tokyo and working with Satoko, but he would get free train ride wherever he wanted to go because he was so beloved. And he did speak Japanese very well, that's my hope. He had an elementary language level, but everybody could understand him a little bit, and he was very beloved in Japan. So then when the Pope came, there's this video of him, the Pope thanked him for his work, and he's just crying in the video. He's just crying when Pope John Paul kisses his head.
What an honor for these two Poles, Polish people to meet each other.
So he stayed there the whole time, so he came over to St. Maximilian Kolbe and never went back home. It's kind of neat, isn't it?
Yeah.
When the bomb was dropped, he helped orphan children
Yeah.
who lost their parents, and then he moved to Tokyo, and
Wow.
that's where he met Satoko, and he would hand out the Seibo no Kishi, their magazine, and miraculous medals at the train station. And then I took this picture for you, Father Seraphin.
Oh, yeah.
He gave you that book on the Columban Fathers, their journey in Japan, so they're right across from where Brother Zeno is buried. And then we went to Satoko Kitahara's grave, and I stubbed my toe pretty badly on the way there, but I had an appointment with some friends afterwards, and I didn't know how to get there, so I was a bit preoccupied. She and another pilgrim just lifted up my foot and started bandaging
Yeah, he's on the
bandaging
phone
it.
trying to get hold of this guy who's late, and then your foot, blood's coming out.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, so it was a blessing to be at her grave there.
that's her.
Mm-hmm. She died when she was only 28 years old,
Wow.
but she devoted herself to living in this ants town, the Arinomachi. She wanted to be just like those people, and in fact, she started this whole movement, and because of her health, she had to leave for a little while. She came back, and there were other leaders leading for her, and they said, well, we don't want you anymore. So she just focused on her health and passed away, but she would invite those ants, they were called, into her home, and her parents were like, what are you doing bringing these people here? And they would play on the piano and do all these kinds of fun things that people of her family status could do, so it brought them a lot of joy. And then I went to Tokyo. I got lost. There were multiple Tokyo Prince hotels, and I tried to find my way back, and I typed it into Google, and I ended up at the wrong one. But I was wandering around late into the night because I had already caught the last train, trying to figure out how to get there, and so I took some pictures of the Tokyo Tower. I had to take a taxi back. That was expensive, but when we got there, she teases me. She says, "Didn't you know there's more than one Tokyo Prince hotel?"
I don't know, Tokyo's
No.
a big place. That's alright. Maybe he wasn't helping making the arrangements. So maybe,
Then we went to Kakunodate, which is near Akita, and that's a samurai village. So I had a lot of fun there. There's a well. And then Leslie was reminded of her home growing up there. Looked a lot like this. Traditional tatami mats. And there's some samurai outfits. A map of Japan from the olden days. There's kind of a sitting room. They would cook fish over this pot. Then a fun picture. They have these kinds of things all over the place.
Oh, brother and his samurai umbrella.
Yeah.
The guy bought him that samurai umbrella.
It was
Yeah.
our guide, Layla. She wanted me to have it, and then I started speaking Japanese. I was like, "Kiriso no samurai de gozaimasu." I'm Christ samurai. People thought that was fun. Here's a look at kind of a samurai's house. Some farm equipment. Let's kind of see the different tools they used. This says, "Please watch your head." So I had to bend down quite a bit to get in there. If it says, "Please watch your head" for a Japanese, you can only imagine how tough it was for me. And they had some old dolls, some old plates. This is a fire truck.
A fire truck.
Yeah, from the 1600s. Yeah. They had phonographs and old cameras. A lot of them were from Germany. They had kind of like a mock play production. Then they had jean rickshaws where they carry people on those carts. I think it's kind of inhumane, personally. And then in Akita, saw this dog. There was a hand sanitizer bottle with a kimono on it. And we took a picture at the station. There's some fish for Boys' Day. It's a holiday. And here's some of the people that we met. So this is a picture I took 5 years ago of Brother Dominic Savio, and I got to meet him again. So that was a real blessing to be with him. And then this is someone who helped us out a lot, Shigeko. And we'll tell you how he helped us, but it was a real blessing to meet up with him in the initial days. There's that person that translated for us on the trip. Couple of rosaries made by Dominic Michael were given to these people who were very helpful for us. That was at the church in Kumamoto. There we are with a picture with them outside the church. This guy we ran into, he was just there to pray at, was it St. Francis Xavier's church, I think? And he just accompanied us for lunch.
Want to hang out with us more?
Got to really know him well and talk to him and tell him about our mission. He's studying for flight school. This bus driver was amazing. He got us everywhere we needed to go, and sometimes we would end up at the wrong place, and then he would drive us to the next spot. But the most amazing feat he pulled off was there was this narrow hill, and there was one bus coming up, and we were going down, and they navigated it in such a way that he was able to maneuver around that other bus. We all applauded him.
For surviving.
Yeah. There was a priest here that was at the Hiroshima church, I believe. He had a beautiful stole there. And this artist was outside drawing the Genbakudomu. And there was a priest there that kind of told us about the Tokyo martyrs. This lady we encountered, one of the last churches we were at, her name is Shizuka, and she just asked for prayers for her mother who passed away. She was an atomic bomb victim. She died 20 years ago. She died on the same day as my own mom, May 16th. So I thought that was startling. And we met her on April 29th, which is the day my mom's mom passed away. Her name was Teresa, and that was her English name. So there's a lot of really cool connections there. She's coming to the U.S. for a Eucharistic Congress in Indiana soon. Here's some of my old friends from college. I met him, he was in my Japanese class, and that's his wife, Kana, and their little son there, Winter. I got to spend some time with him. There's Winter doing pull-ups on the train.
Huge. Hawaii.
Yeah. And then some of my other friends from college. I didn't know her until a few years ago, but he came to Minnesota to stay with me. And then that was another friend that I had lunch with every day when I was at school there. And then we met some of the priests from Maximilian Kolbe's order, Father Yamaguchi. The priest was very helpful. He was a Peruvian priest. And I told him that we had some Peruvians on our trip, and he was like, "What, really?" And then we all started speaking in Spanish. And you want to talk about your friend?
Oh, it was a friend of mine that our days got mixed up when we were going to come, and anyhow, she's like, "What, you're here today?" I'm like, "Okay, I'll meet you at dinner. We're going to have dinner." Anyhow, long story short, she ended up driving to our hotel, and she had gifts for everybody, and brother was so nice to sit up and visit with her.
They had only met one time for what? One evening? 1 hour?
No, we stayed with her for like a week.
Oh, a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
But-
after we just been kept in contact, and she just had gifts for everybody. Just so nice.
That's
You know,
kind of
people are
been
so nice.
my experience with Japanese is however little you know them, you just have like this lifelong friendship that she would travel like an hour and a half at night to come visit you for what? Was it 1 or 2 hours?
Yeah.
Then she had to go again because her parents were not in good health.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just amazing people. And then some people we met at the airport in Chicago.
Yeah, there's a chapel in Chicago. I don't know if you've ever been there, and Father Elias had mass there, and this is a sister that lives there, and so his wine got confiscated, and so he asked her to bring some wine.
Yeah.
So
We went shopping, what was it, for apple cider vinegar or something? We couldn't read the labels. But when Leslie and I first arrived there,
Oh, yeah.
Father Elias wasn't with us, and we were like, what are we going to do? We can't have Mass. We don't have a priest.
yeah.
Well, something told me before I left, the Holy Spirit, I believe, said, bring your picks and bring your holy water. I usually don't do that, but I thought I should just in case. And we were able to use it because when we were in the chapel, there was nobody in there, and the office was closed. We were on our way out, ready to catch our flight. This man comes up the elevator as we're going down, and I thought, what if he's with the chaplaincy? So we run back up the stairs and go talk to him, and sure enough, he's the sacristan. And he says, I can open the tabernacle for you, and so he does, and we have a communion
That's
service.
nice. We were supposed to meet
Such a
Father Elias in
blessing.
the chapel, and he
Yeah.
was gonna have Mass, but
Yeah.
his flight got canceled.
So it's like Our Lady heard our prayer,
Ah,
our plea,
nice.
and provided our Lord to us.
We were really happy. We
Yeah.
prayed the rosary before.
Here's one of Brother Dominic Michael's rosaries that he made. And this is Sister Agnes Sasagawa there. And there she is. We got to be in the same building.
Well, they
As
won't
the
let us go
visionary.
see her because of COVID, they're COVID crazy, and so
Okay, so she's still living.
she's
She's
still
92,
alive.
93.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. This Shigeko here is the one, our contact that we had. He's not a Catholic, he's a Protestant, but he's very in tune with
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Catholic things, especially with Sister Agnes and the Blessed Virgin Mary. And he had to do some serious digging to find out where she was, because she's been hidden away. And even the Bishop of Tokyo said that he doesn't acknowledge Our Lady of Akita as a genuine
But now they
apparition.
do. They've kind of changed their tune,
Yeah,
which is kind of nice.
because Cardinal Ratzinger, or Pope Benedict, basically said, the bishop can approve these miracles. It doesn't have to come from me, as the Pope or a Cardinal, right? Yeah.
I don't know, but the bishop there now has his pictures up, and he's like welcomes everybody to come to a place of prayer. So it's kind of nice that they've turned the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a bad attitude about it, but I guess they have her. They don't want people to visit her, or
Mhm.
they don't want her interviewing her. I don't know,
Yeah.
but she's hiding in some nursing home or something.
Father Elias turned to me and asked me to translate a lot of things, which I did, but then he asked me something that was just beyond me. It was like, is the brown scapular the sign that was left by Our Lady
Yeah,
in
right.
the end times or something?
Yeah.
He's like, translate that. And I was like, I can't.
It was
He's
really
like,
funny.
he just wanted to extract,
With all
all
these,
the
like,
this
simple
apocalyptic
questions.
stuff from Sister Agnes, but I was like, I can't help you.
It's like, how are you? How are you feeling? How many rosaries? All these simple questions.
That
all
was
the time.
a good. So he was like, ask her how many rosaries she prays every day, and I was like, and I asked the nurse, how many rosaries. She's like, what are you asking? And I was like, 3 times, 4 times. She's like, oh yeah, 3 times. So we don't know. It's a mystery, but I guess she purportedly prayed 20 times every day
Yeah, in
when she
2012
was young.
she was interviewed and said she just prayed enough rosaries, and what's not enough rosaries, 22 or something like that. So when brother says that she prays 3 rosaries, Father Elias says, she only prays 3 rosaries. Picking him, Anyhow, I just can't. It was just kind of funny. Ask her if the brown scapular is the sign of Our Lady.
And then he turns to Shigeko. He's like, translate it. And he's like, I can't. So
Yeah, it was
Why
kind of
couldn't
funny.
you?
I didn't know what he was even asking. But there she is praying, and just included a picture of Our Lady of Akita next to her. So she was
We would
very
send things up, and then she would pray with them. So
Mhm. like the rosary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really nice. And then I thought, well, she prayed. I sent this up, and she pulled hers out. She goes, oh, she wears the same thing.
Mhm.
And then I sent my rosary up, and then I thought, oh, that's right. I had a friend that sent a bunch of rosaries with me. I should send all these rosaries up, and then they'd be great gifts. Like,
Mhm.
who wouldn't want a rosary? that Sister Agnes had blessed. So I told in my broken Japanese, if you could send these up to Sister Agnes, and you can keep one and bring me the rest. Well, she sent them up, and then she only meant me back the one, and they kept the rest. So. That's what happens when I speak Japanese. So.
Did Dominic's Rosary get up there?
So
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
the one, and I chose the golden one because of her seeing the golden tabernacle glowing. So I thought that would
yeah,
be.
here she's
She's
with it.
holding it, yeah,
Oh.
and she was very cognizant.
So
She was very articulate, and she would very humble. She just kept saying, "Arigato gozaimasu,
Yeah.
arigato gozaimasu, thank you, thank you."
She'd say it was really big. She said.
Oh
it
yeah,
was really
yeah. She said the rosary was huge.
It was like she had a stroke. Maybe like one side of her mouth
Yeah.
was a little bit
Mhm.
impaired or whatever.
Yeah.
But and then Shigeko, he sang Ave Maria to her. That was his gift
I
to
have,
her.
I have a video of that if you'd like to see afterwards. Yeah.
It was fun. We had a really good time with it.
So here's some of our
Just to
episodes.
let you guys know, I have a phone call coming in at 9 o'clock. So
Okay.
I just have to step out.
Okay, we're wrapping up. Here's some of our apostolic endeavors. So we handed out to a lot of children, and they were very grateful, very receptive. Here's my friend. He's not Catholic, but he and his wife both accepted the miraculous medals and are wearing them.
I love it when they would want to put it on right away. You
Oh,
know, and
it was
post their
such a
picture.
blessing. Yeah, I see
Stand
that.
back a little bit.
This guy, he ran a sword shop, and he let me pull out his sword and put it back, and I gave him a miraculous medal, and he said, come back in my shop. And I was like, okay, if I were in the States, this would be really weird. But I'm like, because I'm in Japan, I know this is like a normal thing. He gave me these Edo period coins. So I have 3 of those now, thanks to him. He's just very gracious, very grateful people. And then here's some handing out to some students. This is my favorite. This was right outside Ora Cathedral. These young children were so curious. One boy said he didn't want the medal, but then he saw all his friends taking them, so then he wanted one. And here you can see, look at
Wow.
how precious is that.
Right, he wouldn't let go of Father's hand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
touching moment.
yeah.
Like these guys, you guys are rock stars there. You walk down the street and everybody's like,
The friar's got more than 3 knots on his rope.
The one is for Our Lady.
Mhm. Devotion
Yeah.
to Our Lady. Yeah, it's her 4th
Our
vow.
Lady, yeah.
Good observation. Yeah, even to store clerks, we handed them out. This guy put it on right away, and
Yeah,
his wife
so
was
fun.
like, "Get back to work." And then I was like, "Here, you can have one too." She's like, "Oh, what's this?"
So fun. It was
Yeah.
really fun doing this. It
Yeah.
was- yeah, they're so receptive.
And I gave one to the cat.
Give that to the cat.
Not
its neck.
Even cats are blessed by Our Lady. So here's some of our pilgrims on the trip. This one here, Johanna, was from Germany. She was our only one not from the United States. And then Patricia and David Brown, they're very good benefactors. Very, very kind. They're the ones who sent you the email.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she's entering the convent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was great.
This was one of her last trips
Yeah.
out in the
Beautiful.
world. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
The Browns you
Sure.
helped get back without a COVID test or
Mm-hmm.
something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I helped translate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslie was on the side. She's like, "They don't need a COVID test. They don't need a vaccine." I was
Right
like,
away. Stop. No CC. No. That's my Japanese. No.
Then here's our guide, Layla.